Rock and roll.
The sight of Keanu Reeves in a Reagan mask robbing banks, while Patrick Swayze quoted philosophy between surf sessions, became the ultimate early 90s action movie. Point Break hit theaters on July 12, 1991, and proved that Kathryn Bigelow could direct a testosterone-fueled thriller about FBI agents and bank-robbing surfers that somehow worked as both pure adrenaline and actual cinema. Bigelow directed her breakout action film, transforming a script about surfing criminals into a cultural phenomenon. Keanu Reeves played Johnny Utah, the FBI rookie who goes undercover in the surf scene and gets seduced by the lifestyle. Patrick Swayze was Bodie, the philosophical surfer leading a gang of bank robbers called the Ex-Presidents. And Lori Petty played Tyler, the surfer who becomes Utah's connection to Bodie's world. The film cost $24 million, featured real skydiving stunts that nearly ended with deaths, and earned $83.5 million worldwide while launching the extreme sports action genre. It spawned a remake, a stage parody, endless quotations, and made skydiving and surfing look cooler than any sport had ever looked on screen. But behind every aerial stunt and wave sequence was chaos, actors doing genuinely dangerous practical stunts, a director who jumped from planes to capture perfect shots, and production decisions that chose authenticity over safety in ways that would never be permitted today. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe for more film deep dives, and let's investigate 15 wild facts about Point Break, starting with number 15. Number 15. The film had multiple title changes. Before settling on Point Break.
He's from camp?
Heads up!
Yeah. Good catch.
Point Break wasn't always called Point Break. The production went through several title changes during development before landing on the final name that became iconic. The filmmakers struggled to find a title that captured both the surfing culture and the action thriller elements. Early in development, the project had different working titles as the script evolved and the focus shifted. The title Point Break refers to a specific surfing phenomenon where waves break around a rocky point, creating optimal surfing conditions. Point breaks are among the most desirable wave formations for surfers because they create long, consistently shaped waves. Using authentic surf terminology rather than a generic action movie title showed the filmmakers' commitment to respecting surf culture. The choice signaled from the outset that this wasn't just an action movie using surfing as window dressing. The title's meaning isn't immediately obvious to non-surfers, which created some marketing challenges. But the authenticity it conveyed to actual surfers helped the film earn credibility with the community it portrayed. The decision to use real surf language extended throughout the film's dialogue and cultural references. Surfing consultants worked to ensure terminology was used correctly, and surf culture was portrayed with respect rather than Hollywood stereotypes. Here's the naming struggle. The production cycled through titles before finding one that worked. The final choice of actual surf terminology over generic action language helped Point Break earn respect from the culture it depicted. Number 14. Patrick Swayze. Originally auditioned for Johnny Utah's role, not Bodie.
Oh, no, I say when it's over.
Patrick Swayze didn't originally pursue the role that made him iconic in Point Break. He actually auditioned to play Johnny Utah, the FBI agent that eventually went to Keanu Reeves. When Swayze first read the script, he was drawn to the lead role of the straight-laced FBI agent going undercover. He saw Utah as the protagonist and the character with the most dramatic arc, transforming from rule follower to someone questioning everything. The casting team had different ideas. They recognized that Swayze's natural charisma and philosophical presence made him perfect for Bodie, the Zen surfer criminal who quotes Reagan and jumps from planes. Swayze initially resisted playing the supporting role, but the filmmakers convinced him that Bodie was actually the film's most compelling character. They argued that Bodie drives the entire story and represents the film's philosophical core. Once Swayze committed to Bodie, he brought depth to the character that elevated it beyond typical action movie villain. His performance made Bodie sympathetic, philosophical, and genuinely compelling, rather than just criminal. The irony is that the role Swayze didn't want became one of his most memorable performances. Bodie defined Swayze's career as much as his romantic roles in Dirty Dancing and Ghost. Here's the casting reversal. Swayze wanted to play the FBI agent but ended up as the surfer criminal. The role he initially resisted became the one he's most remembered for. Number 13, the film opened at number 2, behind Terminator 2, both connected to James Cameron.
Stop us against the system.
Point Break opened in theaters on July 12, 1991, and debuted at number 2 at the box office. The film that beat it? Terminator 2, Judgment Day, which was in its second weekend. Point Break earned $8.5 million in its opening weekend, a solid performance for an R-rated action film. But Terminator 2 was breaking records, continuing its domination of the summer box office with massive repeat business. The connection between the two films made the box office battle particularly interesting. James Cameron directed Terminator 2 and served as executive producer on Point Break. That meant the top two films in America that weekend were both connected to Cameron. Point Break also shared another connection to Terminator 2. Both films featured Kathryn Bigelow's influence. She was married to Cameron at the time, and the two filmmakers were at the peak of their creative powers. Point Break eventually earned $83.5 million worldwide against its $24 million budget, making it a solid commercial success. It wasn't an instant blockbuster like Terminator 2, but it found its audience. The film's cult following grew substantially after its theatrical release through home video and cable television. Point Break became more beloved over time, with audiences appreciating its unique blend of action and philosophy. Here's the box office irony. Point Break opened second to a film that shared the same executive producer. Cameron had both the number 1 and number 2 films in America simultaneously. Number 12, Kathryn Bigelow was the first woman to direct a major studio action film. Point Break made Kathryn Bigelow the first woman to direct a major studio action film with significant budget and wide release. Before Point Break, Hollywood had essentially gatekept action directing as an exclusively male domain. Bigelow had directed Near Dark and Blue Steel, but Point Break was her first big-budget studio action film, with major stars and extensive stunt work.
Thank you.
Stay up.
The $24 million budget was unprecedented for a female director in the action genre. The industry watched closely to see if a woman could handle action filmmaking. Studio executives questioned whether Bigelow could manage the technical demands, coordinate dangerous stunts, and deliver the kinetic energy audiences expected from action films. Bigelow faced skepticism from various quarters about whether she understood action or could execute it effectively. The assumption that action required masculine sensibility was widespread in early 1990s Hollywood. Bigelow proved all doubters wrong by delivering a film that redefined action cinema. Point Break's combination of practical stunts, kinetic energy, and philosophical depth showed that gender had nothing to do with directing great action. The film's success opened doors for future female action directors, but also highlighted how resistant the industry had been. Bigelow had to be exceptional just to get the opportunity most male directors received routinely. Here's the barrier broken. Bigelow directed the first major studio action film by a woman and made it a classic. The genre Hollywood reserved for men was conquered by a director who understood action better than her male predecessors. Number 11, Patrick Swayze fractured ribs during production but kept jumping anyway.
Adios, amigo!
During Point Break's intense skydiving sequences, Patrick Swayze suffered rib injuries that would have sidelined most actors. He reportedly fractured ribs during the aerial work, but refused to stop performing his own stunts. The skydiving sequences required Swayze to jump repeatedly while performing specific actions on camera. The physical toll of landing after jumps, combined with the demands of aerial choreography, put enormous stress on his body. Swayze's rib injury created serious concerns for the production. The studio had invested $24 million in the film and couldn't afford to lose their lead actor to injury. Insurance companies and producers worried about the risk of further damage. Despite the pain and the pressure from production to use stunt doubles, Swayze insisted on continuing to perform his own aerial work. His commitment to authenticity meant he was willing to work through injuries that would have ended most performers' stunt work. The production implemented additional safety measures and gave Swayze more recovery time between jumps, but he remained determined to complete the aerial sequences himself. Swayze's dedication to performing his own stunts despite injury became legendary among the cast and crew. His willingness to push through pain for authenticity elevated the entire production's commitment to realism. Here's the painful dedication. Swayze broke ribs and kept jumping from planes anyway. The aerial sequences that look effortless on screen came from an actor performing through genuine injury. Number 10. Keanu Reeves trained for 2 full months in Hawaii before filming a single frame. Before principal photography began, Keanu Reeves underwent 2 months of intensive surfing training in Hawaii. The production wanted authentic surfing performances rather than faking it with camera tricks and doubles. Reeves had never surfed before Point Break. He arrived in Hawaii as a complete novice and spent 8 weeks training daily with professional surf instructors. The commitment was serious athletic training, not just cursory preparation. The training sessions lasted several hours each day. Reeves learned to paddle, read waves, pop up on the board, and perform basic to intermediate maneuvers. The physical demands were intense, combining cardio endurance with balance and technique. By the time filming began, Reeves could perform competently enough to look authentic on camera. He wasn't a professional-level surfer, but he'd developed genuine skills that showed on screen. The production still used professional surf doubles for the most advanced maneuvers, but many shots showing Utah learning to surf feature Reeves actually learning. The authenticity of his progression from novice to competent surfer was real because that's what happened. Reeves also trained with FBI agents to understand law enforcement procedures and worked with quarterback coaches at UCLA to prepare for Johnny Utah's football backstory. The character's athletic background required Reeves to develop multiple physical skills. Here's the preparation commitment. Reeves spent 2 months becoming a legitimate surfer before filming began. The learning curve visible on screen mirrored his actual experience. Number 9. Tony Stark's Point Break, nickname for Thor, came directly from this film. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Tony Stark calls Thor Point Break as a recurring joke. The nickname references Patrick Swayze's character, Bodhi, and his long blonde hair that resembles Thor's appearance. The joke first appears in Avengers: Age of Ultron, when Tony Stark mocks Thor by comparing his flowing blonde locks to Bodhi's iconic surfer hair. It's Stark being his typical snarky self, making pop culture references to Needle the God of Thunder. The nickname became a running MCU gag. In Thor Ragnarok, the callback gets even better. When Thor is locked out of the Quinjet and tries various passwords like Thor and God of Thunder, nothing works. Finally, he remembers Stark's insult and tries Point Break as the password. It opens immediately. The scene became one of Ragnarok's funniest moments, showing that Stark programmed his jets to recognize Thor only by the nickname meant to mock him. It's the perfect combination of Stark's ego and sense of humor. The Point Break reference introduced a new generation to the 1991 film. Younger MCU fans who'd never seen Point Break suddenly wanted to understand the joke, creating renewed interest in Bigelow's action classic. The nickname's persistence across multiple MCU films shows how deeply Point Break penetrated pop culture. A 1991 surfing action film became a permanent shorthand for blonde guy in the world's biggest film franchise. Here's the cultural longevity. Point Break became an MCU running joke 24 years after release. Bodhi's iconic look lives on as Thor's official password. Number 8. Point Break spawned Point Break Live, where audience members play Keanu every night.
Sync is in charge with it.
You two have produced exactly squat! During which time,
Point Break developed such a devoted cult following that it inspired Point Break Live, a stage adaptation where a random audience member plays Johnny Utah in every performance while professional actors perform the rest of the film. The show premiered in 2003 in Seattle and became a phenomenon. The concept was simple but brilliant. Select someone from the audience each night to star as Utah, while the rest of the cast performs the entire film live on stage. The chosen audience member reads all their lines from cue cards held by a stage assistant. This creates unpredictable comedy because the volunteer either improvises awkwardly or reads stiffly from cards, while professional actors react to the chaos. Major scenes from the film, including skydiving sequences and bank robberies, are recreated on stage with creative low-budget effects. The production treats Point Break with both reverence and humor, performing it faithfully while acknowledging the absurdity of staging it live. Point Break Live toured to New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and other major cities, running for years. The show became its own cult phenomenon, with people attending multiple times to see different audience members struggle through the role. The existence of Point Break Live validated the film's cult classic status. Not every movie inspires elaborate stage adaptations that run for years and tour nationally. Number 7. The production required. Over 150 total skydiving jumps to complete the aerial sequences. Point Break skydiving sequences required over 150 total jumps by cast members, stunt performers, and aerial cinematographers to capture all the necessary footage. Each jump was expensive and weather-dependent, making the aerial work the film's most challenging production element. Every skydiving sequence needed coverage from multiple camera angles, which meant separate jumps for different perspectives. Actors would perform while multiple camera operators jumped alongside, filming from various positions. The jumps could only happen in perfect weather conditions. Clouds, wind, or rain meant expensive delays, with cast and crew on standby unable to work. The production lost significant time waiting for ideal skydiving weather. Each jump cost thousands of dollars when factoring in plane rental, fuel, skydivers, camera equipment, and support crew. With over 150 jumps needed, the cumulative cost represented a substantial portion of the film's budget. The physical demands on everyone involved were intense. Jumping from planes repeatedly over weeks and months wore down even experienced skydivers. The actors pushing through dozens of jumps while also filming ground scenes showed remarkable endurance. The commitment to capturing real aerial footage rather than faking it with models or effects distinguished Point Break from other action films. The authenticity visible in the skydiving scenes came from genuinely performing those stunts over and over. Number 6. Kathryn Bigelow, strapped on a parachute and jumped from planes to direct aerial scenes. Kathryn Bigelow didn't direct Point Break skydiving sequences from the safety of the ground. She strapped on a parachute, boarded the plane with her cast and crew, and jumped to direct the aerial cinematography in freefall. Bigelow wanted complete control over the aerial sequences, and understood that directing from the ground meant relying on others to execute her vision. Jumping herself allowed her to see exactly what the cameras captured and communicate with the aerial cinematography team directly. She worked with the aerial camera operators to plan timing, framing, and movement while falling through the sky. Her hands-on approach meant she could make real-time adjustments rather than discovering problems after everyone had already landed. For the surfing sequences, Bigelow took a similar approach. She sat on a surfboard just outside the frame, directing actors from the water rather than shouting instructions from the beach. Her commitment to being physically present in the most challenging scenes earned respect from the stunt teams and actors. They watched their director take the same risks they did, which created a culture of fearlessness on set. Bigelow's willingness to jump from planes to get perfect shots became legendary in action filmmaking. It demonstrated that directing great action meant understanding it from the inside, not just watching from safety. Here's the directorial dedication. Bigelow jumped from planes to direct aerial scenes in freefall. The hands-on approach meant risking herself to get the shots right. Number 5. Anthony Kiedis, from Red Hot Chili Peppers, appears in the film as a gang member. Anthony Kiedis, lead singer of Red Hot Chili Peppers, appears in Point Break as Tone, a member of Bodie's ex-president's surfing gang.
You ram him hard into the guardrail, Dale. That'll stop.
His appearance connects the film to the early 90s alternative rock scene. Kiedis plays one of the surfers in Bodie's crew during the film's action sequences. He appears in scenes with the gang, wearing surf gear, and participating in the group dynamics that establish the ex-presidents as a tight-knit community. The casting of a recognizable rock star in a supporting role added cultural credibility to Point Break's portrayal of California surf and counterculture. The Red Hot Chili Peppers were at the height of their popularity in 1991, making Kiedis' involvement noteworthy. His role is relatively small compared to the main cast, but having an actual musician from the LA alternative scene brought authenticity to the film's depiction of the subculture Bodhi represents. The ex-presidents aren't just criminals, they're part of a lifestyle and community. Point Break's connection to the music scene of the era helped establish its cultural relevance beyond just being an action film. The inclusion of figures like Kiedis from outside traditional Hollywood showed the film's reach into broader youth culture. For fans of Red Hot Chili Peppers, spotting Kiedis in the film became a fun Easter egg. His presence reminded audiences that Point Break was deeply connected to early 90s California culture beyond just surfing. Number 4. Patrick Swayze. Did 55 skydiving jumps with 0. Prior experience before production. Patrick Swayze had never skydived before Point Break. He completed his first jump during pre-production training and ended up doing 55 total jumps during filming, transforming from complete novice to someone performing his own aerial stunts. The production required actors to do real skydiving for authenticity. Swayze committed fully, training intensively and pushing to do as many of his own aerial stunts as insurance and safety would allow. Swayze's athletic background as a dancer gave him body awareness that helped him learn skydiving quickly, but going from 0 jumps to 55 in a matter of months, while also filming a major movie, required obsessive dedication. Each jump carried real risk. Swayze was falling from planes thousands of feet up, trusting his training and equipment while performing for cameras. The danger was genuine every single time. Swayze became genuinely obsessed with skydiving during production. He later said the rush of jumping was addictive, and he considered continuing the sport after filming Wrapped. The 55 jumps Swayze completed represented serious commitment to performing his own stunts. Many of the aerial shots showing Bodhi falling through the sky are actually Swayze, not a stunt double. Here's the transformation. Swayze went from never having jumped to completing 55 jumps. The aerial authenticity audiences see came from an actor who learned an extreme sport for the role. Number 3. The final scene says Bells Beach, Australia, but was completely filmed in Hawaii. Point Break's climactic ending shows a title card reading Bells Beach, Australia, where Bodhi attempts to surf a massive 50-year storm. There's just one problem. The production never went to Australia. The entire finale was filmed in Hawaii. The fictional setting claims Bodhi travels to Bells Beach to catch a once-in-50-year storm that creates the ultimate wave. The film sells this location with specific on-screen text and dialogue referencing Australia. In reality, every frame of that finale was shot on the north shore of Oahu, Hawaii. Production never sent cast or crew to Australia at all. The Bells Beach location is completely fabricated. The decision to film in Hawaii rather than Australia came down to practical considerations. Hawaii offered better wave conditions, more predictable weather, and easier logistics for a major production. Filming in Australia would have been significantly more expensive and complicated. The production used stock footage of the Australian coastline and blended it with Hawaiian shots through editing. The technique created the illusion of the Australian location while actually filming much closer to home. Most audiences had no idea the ending wasn't filmed where the movie claimed. The deception worked perfectly until production details eventually revealed the truth. Number 2. A trained pit bull was thrown at Keanu Reeves during the famous foot chase. During Point Break's intense foot chase between Johnny Utah and Bodhi through suburban neighborhoods, there's a moment that shocks viewers every time. A pit bull gets thrown directly at Keanu Reeves mid-sprint. The scene shows Utah chasing Bodhi through yards and over fences. Suddenly, a dog comes flying through the air straight at Reeves. He has to catch the dog, calm it briefly, set it down gently, and continue the chase without breaking stride. This wasn't CGI or camera trickery. A real trained pit bull was actually thrown at Reeves during filming. The dog was a professional animal actor, trained specifically for the stunt, and extensive safety protocols were in place. The throw was carefully choreographed with animal handlers present. The dog was trained to be caught safely and remain calm during the stunt. Multiple takes were required to get the timing and Reeves's reaction exactly right. Reeves's surprise and the authenticity of his reaction added genuine chaos to the scene. The moment feels completely unpredictable because catching a flying dog while sprinting full speed is inherently unpredictable. The Pitbull stunt became one of the chase's most memorable moments. It exemplifies Kathryn Bigelow's commitment to adding unexpected obstacles that make the sequence feel raw and chaotic rather than choreographed. Number 1. Patrick Swayze's parachute actually malfunctioned mid-jump. The most terrifying moment of Point Break's production happened when Patrick Swayze's main parachute malfunctioned during an actual jump. The chute tangled during deployment, sending Swayze into an uncontrolled descent with seconds to save himself. Swayze was performing one of his many jumps when his main parachute failed to deploy correctly. The chute partially opened but became tangled, creating a dangerous situation called a streamer, where the parachute can't properly slow descent. Swayze had only seconds to recognize the malfunction, cut away the failed main chute, and deploy his emergency reserve parachute. If he hesitated or panicked, he would have continued falling without a working chute. Swayze executed the emergency procedure correctly, cutting away the tangled main and deploying his reserve. The reserve opened properly and he landed safely, but the crew watching from the ground were terrified. The near disaster happened in front of the entire production. Everyone saw Swayze's main chute fail and watched him falling with a malfunctioning parachute before the reserve deployed. Those seconds felt like forever. After landing safely, Swayze insisted on continuing to perform his own skydiving stunts. The malfunction didn't deter him from completing the aerial sequences himself. Here's the near-death experience. Swayze's parachute actually failed mid-jump, and he had to deploy emergency backup to survive. The danger of the aerial stunts was proven real in the most terrifying way. And there you have it, 15 wild, weird facts about Point Break. Which facts surprised you most? Drop your answers in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the film that proved extreme sports and philosophy could create cinema instead of just spectacle, smash that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories about the movies that defined our childhoods. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.